Yes! Hello, we are live. I'm Tony Craig. This is F1 Grandstand, and this is your live daily F1 news. And we've got a lot to get into tonight. I tell you, we're going to be talking about Horner's Alpine deal in jeopardy. We're going to be talking about which parts of the car that Ferrari have froze development on for the 2026 car. Damon Hill says Adrian Newey he's going to surprise the entire Formula One community next year. I don't know if he's going to surprise us because we know. F1 car's got an overweight problem. And Cadillac, we've got pictures of Cadillac's livery, their test livery for Barcelona. Lots to get into, and a little bit about Hadjar and Hamilton as well. Loads to get into. If you're an F1 fan, then of course you're in the right place. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Smash a like on the video if you do enjoy it. But make sure, the most important thing is turn your notifications on. There's a little bell. Hit that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all of our content. Thank you so much for your support. Yeah, lot to get into tonight. I'm going to say a quick hello to the chat. Jaman's in the chat. Gemma, queen of the chat, is in there. Livewire, Eric. Hey, my friend. Sudrish, back in the game. Nice to have you all with us. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. And everyone's favourite topic, Christian Horner. And now, I'm going to say, some of you are going to know this. I broke this story just earlier last week. And now other news outlets are now jumping on the problems with that deal. We're going to be talking about it. So, first of all, let's get into the Christian Horner situation with his purchase of those shares from Otto Capital at 24% that is up for grabs. Look, we've been talking about this as a community for a while, right? We've been following the Christian Horner deals right from when he got sacked from Red Bull. Now, just today, F1 Oversteer say F1 team owner could now veto Christian Horner's preferred option to return to the paddock. Now, look, it's no surprise what his preferred option is. We know what his preferred option is. Christian Horner's preferred option is to purchase some, all, or as many as he can, shares of Alpine, right? That's the plan. Otto Capital, which we all know by now, own 24% of the shares in Alpine Racing. Those shares are owned by superstars of sport, film, and TV, okay? But collectively, they own 24%. Now, Otto Capital have been touting that 24% stake in Alpine as a potential sale since the beginning of the 25 season. They bought those shares collectively for £175 million in 2023. Obviously, the F1 boom has done Alpine so many favours, I can't even tell you, as in the valuation of that team. Because Alpine are still dead last, worst team on the grid, yet somehow, even with lack of performance, lack of team infrastructure, lack of team facilities, the value of those shares have tripled, which is insane. And they've only tripled because Formula One as a whole's value has gone up over one season. So at the start of the season, they were entertaining or touting for buyers at around £300 million. Okay, they bought the shares for 175 million in 2023. At the beginning of the season in 25, they were open to offers around 300 million pounds. Guess what? Nobody wanted to buy into Alpine because they're shit, right? Because the team's no good, the infrastructure's not there, they need new equipment, they need a driver and loop simulator, they need a lot of stuff. But now the team looks stronger for one reason and one reason only. They've done a deal with Mercedes to supply them with engines for the next coming years of the new rules and regulations cycle. Now, everyone tells us the Mercedes power unit is probably going to be the best one. And who am I to argue? It looks Mercedes know how to build power units. It probably is going to be pretty darn good. But does that mean the team should be super high in value? Well, it's a plus. So anyway, those shares, that 24%, this is the important point. They want to entertain bids at £600 million, which is basically, they've tripled the money, right? They've gone from 175 to 600. You know, it's roughly 3 times as expensive. Now, that's pretty good business. That's pretty good business. Should they be allowed to sell them now? But hey, Semmer, it's not a sneaky live stream. Did you not get a notification? Do you know what? Just on that, I think if I set my stream up to too short a time gap, that you don't get a notification. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. I must make sure I set my streams up early enough, because if people haven't got notified, that's not good for me. Yes, Emma, welcome to the chat. So here's the thing about those Otto Capital shares. They want 600 million. Now, there's only one buyer, right, who's actually touting, who actually wants to buy those shares. So why is that? It's because other money that wants to come into Formula One don't just want to buy the worst team on the grid without seeing a potential return on investment, i.e. that team improve, that team go up in value, and, you know, they want to safeguard their bet. So the backers behind Horner, the key ingredient there is Christian freaking Horner, right? A team principal that knows how to build a team from zero to hero in a matter of just a few years. He did it at Red Bull. And then they stayed at the top. It was not just getting to the top. They were constantly at the top competing for world championships. So no wonder people say, well, if Horner wants to buy those shares, and yeah, here's the money, because we know our investment is in good, safe hands. We'd rather back, because they're backing Horner. The actual team that Horner goes to is less relevant to the backers. The backers are backing Horner, whichever team they purchase, that he's going to add value, and their investment is going to go up. So that's why there's no other buyers on the grid for that 24% stake that's up for grabs for Otto Capital. But here's the problem. We broke the story recently, just last week, where we found that there had been a clause in the contract for the sale of those shares. And this is what it said. Well, I say we broke it. Planet F1. We got it from Planet F1, but we talked about it in the video medium first. So they noted that a sale to a third party can only occur after the date, which is 3 years after the date of the adoption of these articles, which means September 13, 2023, which means September 13, 2026. And outline sale can only proceed with the approval of Renault. Okay, so that's a big spanner in the works. But now Renault are getting cold feet on the deal, apparently, according to F1 Oversteer. Now, what they're saying is basically the reason for their cold feet is... So let me just read out what it says. It's now been said that Horner is in advanced talks to buy Otto Capital's 24% stake in Alpine. We know that. With the investment group considering selling their shares that it bought for £173 million in 2023, Otto Capital will expect to net £600 million by selling the 24% stake. Renault included a right to match an offer if Otto Capital decides to sell its shares in Alpine when it sold the stake to Otto Capital. So this is what we call, so Renault get a first right to buy on any sale of those shares. Now, this is something new. So here's the thing about that clause, though. If Otto Capital get a firm offer of £600 million, that means Renault have the right to say, we'll give you that £600 million and we'll buy those shares at that price, which means they would effectively gazump Horner. Problem, Renault are broke, right? Renault haven't got any money. They can't chuck in 600 million into buying those shares. They just can't. I mean, they couldn't even afford to improve the goddamn facilities. You know, there's no driver and loop simulators, the wind tunnels, nah. I don't think they've got a wind tunnel. So, you know, the team is running on bare bones. So Renault can't stump up 600 million to buy those shares. So I don't think that is the problem. All they can do, Renault, really, if they don't want Horner, is say, we don't want Horner. You can't sell the shares, because they are basically saying that because Toto Wolff has been making noises about Mercedes supplying 4 teams on the grid is too many. They are now panicking that the Horner-Wolff relationship would mean that Mercedes may find a way to stop supplying engines to Alpine. And Renault are worried about that. I mean, should we be worried about that? I mean, should Alpine be worried about that deal? Because they know the deal they signed with Mercedes. I would have thought that Mercedes deal is ironclad for the supply of engines. I don't know what clauses are in there which would mean that Mercedes could stop supplying engines to Alpine in the coming years. I believe that that's got to be a longish term deal of a minimum of 3 years. I just can't see how, unless there's some weird clause. Wolff has put a clause in saying if Horner comes to Alpine, then we're going to stop supplying, the deal's off. And I can't see that being in that deal. But that's what the fear is, that Mercedes could somehow, or Toto Wolff specifically, could somehow say to Renault, I don't want you to take Horner's money. I don't want him to be back on the grid. I don't want to be supplying engines to a team that Christian Horner owns and runs. Is it a stretch? I mean, I'm going to go to the chat because I don't know what you think about this. Do you think that's actually possible? Do you think that's actually possible? I'm going to go to the chat, see if you can catch up. So Crack Guy says, hey, everyone, don't know how, but somehow I've caught the man flu through YouTube. Yeah, I'm getting over. I'm on the other side of man flu. Got my tissues, and not for that. Keep it clean to blow my nose. But yeah, it's man flu. It's terrible, Crack Guy. If you had my version, it was crazy. So Jaman says, yes, and the only day recently I got a notification was Monday, yesterday. Otherwise, it's been week. That's weird, Jaman. I think it could be right. I'm going to start setting my streams up earlier, guys, because I think it's maybe my fault because I only had half an hour to set my stream up, and maybe that's why you didn't get a notification. I will look into it. But yes. But going back to my question about this situation that Horner's got. He now requires, by the sounds of it, not only does it require Renault's permission for Otro Capital to sell those shares, which, by the way, I think is in Renault's interest. They've got no money. They've got no leadership. They're dead last. And there's no real signs that they're going to do any better next year with the current setup. It's not like they brought in a new team principal, brought in top aerodynamicists. They haven't got an Adrian Newey. There's no big names joining that team. They're running with bloody Cola Pinto and Pierre Gasly, which actually Pierre Gasly did do a good job. But, that team is, it's the Poundland. If you're from the UK, you'll know what I mean when I say they're the Poundland F1 team right now. Renault, the bulk owners, owning 76%, have got no money. There's no money going into facilities. They've had to disband their own engine program after being in Formula One for so long. Like, Renault are in trouble. And if they want to keep a Formula One team, the best thing they could do is get into bed with Horner and his big bag of cash, which not only, don't forget, does he buy the shares, he's got money to invest into the team for facilities to make the team better, which only benefits Renault. So the worry about Toto Wolff spitting the dummy out because he's annoyed that he's still got to supply engines to Alpine, that Horner is now going to be owner and team principal of. I think Toto Wolff's got to suck it up, Buttercup, truthfully. And unless there's a clause in that contract, which how can there be? Do you think there's a clause in that contract that could mean that Toto Wolff could pull the engine supply to Alpine? And if they did, I mean, what does that mean for Horner? If that is a problem that happens that comes to that team, I actually think Horner's resourceful enough to solve it, to find another engine supplier. I actually think he could. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think a team would leave themselves exposed like that. If you've done a deal to supply to as a customer team for power units, you're not going to have in that contract and leave yourself exposed that your power unit supplier can literally dictate who your team principal is, or who owns shares in the team. I just don't see that being a viable clause. Who signs that? Because don't forget, it's $135 million a year. That's what the cost cap is for engines. So it's 135 million minimum coming into Mercedes coppers. So I can't see it really being a problem. But maybe I'm wrong. If this sale can't happen till after the summer break, this may drop the price dramatically to something more reasonable. Well, I think the problem is that however you look at it, you've got to remember those shares have been potentially for sale since the beginning of last year. And there wasn't any buyers. Apparently there was a tentative bid to Renault and the group to buy the entire team of around 1.2 billion, which was rejected. But was it a serious bid? You know, was it actually a serious bid? I don't know. But they're not banging on the door saying, there's not a queue of people trying to buy those 24%, that 24% of Alpine, because Alpine only improves, in my opinion, with Horner or somebody of his ilk, and there isn't anyone else of his ilk to lead that team. If I'm an investor, I'm not investing because I think Alpine's a great opportunity. I'm investing because Alpine becomes a great opportunity because I've got a leader in there that I trust who's giving me the best chance of turning that team around, becoming a competitive team, a winning team, and my investment goes through the roof. So I find it a little bit unlikely that Horner's deal is that much in jeopardy. And I find it unlikely that Renault... I know Horner's got to build some bridges with Renault. He's definitely got to do some schmoozing. He's definitely got to shake some hands, make a few apologies for the way he talked about the Renault engines towards the end of their supply deal at Red Bull. He did slate them publicly, very publicly. And it was a very... It was not an amicable divorce at the time when Red Bull went over to Honda. It wasn't an amicable divorce. It was a nasty divorce. But let's face it, it's a divorce. At that point, you know, you've all fallen out. Everyone's saying everyone's an arsehole. It's what happens, right? Divorce is not pretty, and it's the same in Formula One. But can you then, for the sake of the kids, right, make friends? Because that's what we're talking about now, because now that's the situation. Horner and Renault need to kiss and make up and be friendly and civil for the sake of the kids, the sake of the team. And I think that's got to be the situation. Otherwise, what do? They keep Flavio Briatore in some weird role as spurious leader without being team principal, special advisor. You know, a guy that's not been on the grid for God knows how many years since he was basically accused of match fixing, if you want to call it that. Yeah, basically instructing his driver to go and take out another driver in order for Fernando Alonso to win the race. You know, Felipe Massa, wasn't it? And, you know, look, it's a situation that just doesn't look good. And Horner is the knight in shining armour of a description with his big bag of cash. So, yes, he has to smooth things over with Renault. Has he done it? I mean, in those conversations, I would have thought would have already been taking place. I'm going to go to the chat, actually. So we've got Blarock, welcome to the chat, my friend. 2 years in last place will drop the value big time. Plus, the new regulations are up for grabs. If they suck, they may change before the year's end. See, this is the thing about the new... I'm so glad you brought that up, Blarock, because the new regulations, they bring hope, right? Anyone can do it. Anyone can interpret those rules and regulations and bring a winning... They can get it right because it's such a massive regulation change. It means that... Look at Brawn, right? Ross Brawn. You get a team, first year out, wins the World Championship. Like, teams suddenly improve. And everyone's full of hope. So they got I think it's the other thing. I think because they're hopeful, they think that, our valuation's going to go up. None of them are considering exactly what Blarock says, is that they can be dead last. They could, in theory, be 3 seconds off the pace because we're never going to get a more diverse interpretation of the rules than we're going to see race one, year one of the major regulation change. And in that cycle. And you're right, the valuation could come down. The problem for Horner is he doesn't want to wait. He wants to get back in the grid, and he wants Alpine, and he's prepared to pay that premium. That's the thing. He's prepared to pay that premium at the current valuation, probably between 500 and 600 million for those shares at the current valuation, because he knows the value, or he believes the value he can add to the team with the, because don't forget, Horner's not just got 500 or 600 million. He's got about 1.5 billion pounds of investor venture capitalist money backing him to go, hey, get back into Formula One. Formula One's a good business to be in. We can see the trajectory of the sport. We know the growth is there. And we know you are the money. So we know we give you 1.5 billion of our money. You're going to double it, triple it over the coming years. And that's why Horner is key to this purchase. Nobody else can buy it. So really, they're a rock and a hard place. I think Otro want to sell. Renault might be making it difficult. Toto Wolff might spit his dummy out, but unless the contract is not ironclad, then Toto Wolff is going to have to suck it up, Buttercup, and just have to deal with it. That's what I think. Brandon, nice to have you in the chat, buddy. But yeah, that's what I think. So Brandon says, I think he's prepared to wait, but wants it now to make the changes now. I think that's the problem, because Formula One, if that team gets stripped of any more assets, and when I'm talking about assets, I'm talking about key personnel. I'm talking about, facilities that are just getting worse and worse and worse. There's going to be a few people or talent in that team right now. Flavio Briatore may have been able to hold on to a few people. I think Flavio Briatore is a Horner ally. And I think Horner's assessed the team and gone, as long as it doesn't get any worse, I can do something with it. He's probably got Red Bull people that he's going to bring over if the Horner clause is still active in their contract, which means they're allowed to leave Red Bull and join Horner at another team. The Horner clause, what a brilliant clause. If I was team principal, having a Horner clause is amazing. If you ever get rid of me and I go to another team, I can take all these staff, all these key people can come with me if they want to, without any form of compensation needed to be paid to the team. And Red Bull let him do it. So there's a lot of people that had the Horner clause. I believe a lot of the people that had the Horner clause this year have been given some money to renegotiate terms for a new contract. I think they're probably clever to do that when they knew Horner was out the door. It'd be the first thing I'd do. Give them some extra money, get them on a new contract, and get that clause removed. But the thing is that's the situation. But we've been talking about this a lot, and I think my honest opinion is this. I think nothing's actually changed. We've got to report the news as it comes out. We react to the news as a community, and we react to the stories. And sometimes we break the stories. And sometimes there are stories that we've already got a better handle on. But today's news from F1 Oversteer, this is what I truly think as an update. I think the deal is still very much live. And I think that Horner's garden leave is probably until April. I think that the 3-year, they call it a gestation period for those shares that were purchased. I think provided that the other stakeholders agree the sale, then the 3-year gestation period doesn't matter. And why do the other shareholders, i.e. Renault, agree that sale is because Renault understand that the value, they need that team to be more competitive. They can't have that team dead last, just making up the numbers. It's bad for the brand. Renault's in the shit already. Now, if Horner comes in and turns that team around, that's good news for Renault. Renault get the credit from that as well. They bask in that sunshine, the same that Horner does. And the valuation of their shares goes up. They can't afford to pay the 600 million to buy Otro shares. That's for sure. Absolutely for sure. They cannot afford to put that money into the F1 team. So it's good for Renault. I think that's the bottom line. And so the assessment is from me is the deal's still on. Renault and Horner will shake hands after that terrible divorce from Red Bull and Renault in 2018. Now they need to make up for the kids' sake, right? For the team. They need to make friends for the team. And I think that's what they'll do. And I think a sale gets done. And the Toto Wolff argument about the Mercedes deal for the engines, I can't see there's a way they get out of that contract. I think Mercedes have to support that, and I think Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, as much as they are brilliant for Formula One, their disagreements, arguments, loggerheads, the antagonist, the protagonist, and sometimes either one of them is the protagonist. It's good for the sport, and I think Toto Wolff realizes it's good for the sport. It's good for the plot, and I think Toto Wolff doesn't stand in the way. I think there might be some fuckery from Wolff. There might be some PR stuff, and they might create a story out of it. But ultimately, I think it's good. That's what I think. Jaman says, if Horner wants into Alpine, he most likely has an engine supplier in mind to replace Mercedes. Of course. Horner knows Wolff will never make the McLaren mistake with him. That's an interesting point. It would crucify Toto Wolff to supply an engine to a Horner team, and then Horner's Alpine team beats Mercedes on track. Toto Wolff wouldn't sleep. He would be beside himself. He'd hate it. That's true. But yeah, of course, do I think Horner has considered the life after the Mercedes power unit deal? Yeah. Has he considered that might come sooner rather than later? Of course he has. Yeah. And even though Horner, got to remember, when Horner was running Red Bull, his conversations with Porsche got to an advanced stage. I don't know why Horner pulled the plug and said no. I think the only reason is because he had already had his heart set on Red Bull powertrains. And I think that's what it was. I think he just saw power. He thought, yes, Red Bull powertrains. And don't forget, Horner was a director of Red Bull powertrains as well. That's another company that Horner would have been a director of. There's 500 employees over there at Red Bull powertrains. 500 employees. And I think that's what it was. But would he be able to open up those conversations with Porsche again? Probably. Porsche are looking for a way into Formula One. Okay. So Brendan says Porsche wanted more control. That's why Red Bull said no. Interesting. I think those conversations could come back on the cards. But what I'm basically saying is, do I think other manufacturers and brands want to get into bed with Horner? I'd say yes. I think they would. I think he brings so many eyeballs onto your brand that, yeah, I think that there'll be some way. Livewire said, could be Ferrari. They're losing Cadillac after 2026. Could you see Horner taking engines from Ferrari? I think only if they're good. Thing is with Horner is, like, when the reason why he was able to say what he said about Renault is because Horner demands the best power unit, or at least a competitive power unit. You know, he's going to want that, you know, and it's not small business, is it? It's $135 million a year plus the development cost. So it isn't small business. So yeah, I mean, Thane says, yeah, Porsche is already coming in under the name Audi. In a way, under the Volkswagen group, but that means you'd have to rule out Lamborghini, Porsche, you know, VW. You know, you're ruling out a few brands that might like a taste of the Formula One pie. But yes, do I believe they would share information? Possibly. Back alleyways in the VW group, information gets passed. Alpine don't have engines, so it works. Porsche wanted more. Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, but I think there's a chance. I think Porsche becomes a conversation. I do. God, I've been going on this. I've done half an hour on this topic. I've got loads to get through. But yeah, that's my bottom line. I think the deal's still on. I think that there might be some jeopardy from Toto Wolff, but nothing that they can't handle. And I think Horner, like Brandon says, I think he'll already be thinking about an exit from Mercedes further down the line. But I don't think it stops the share sale, and I don't think Renault stopped the share sale, because bottom line is there's no one else. There's no one else to buy him. So I think it's a win-win, even if it's through gritted teeth. Right, next story. God, I went on a long time about that one. Next story. Ferrari are already freezing development of one part on their 2026 car before the Barcelona test. Now, it's a little bit more than that. Basically, just to fill you in, Fred Vasseur has gone crazy at the team when the team said we might not be ready for Barcelona testing. Fred Vasseur has got in apparently and played hell with the team, said that's not happening. The team has to be ready for Barcelona testing. So they do have to focus their resources. Now, what they have said is they're freezing development of the mobile wing system for the 26 Formula One season. So the Scuderia have different plans for each stage of testing, with the 3 days they get in Barcelona dedicated to identifying and resolving any systemic anomalies or bugs with their electronics system. So they're going to concentrate on reliability rather than speed as the new cars take the track for the first meaningful run of the year. Now they have to, because that shakedown in Barcelona behind closed doors, they just need to see that there's no massive errors, right? Does the engine, gearbox, suspension, chassis integration work, right? Active aero, does it move? Like, it's basics of basics. Does that car, can it do laps without falling apart? It's not really about true performance yet. When they get to Bahrain, that will be about performance. But right now, it's about, we've built a car together, it's never been run on a track, what the hell is it going to behave like? We've only got simulation data. Does the simulation data even match what we're seeing on track? Nobody knows yet. And that's the truth. So because Ferrari have froze the mobile wing system because they've already done the homologation and they don't want to do it again and they need to just get miles on the car. So that's the situation. And also they need to work on optimizing the relationship between the wind tunnel and CFD software. Now all this sounds a bit boring, but all teams have got the same problem. The software development for the simulation tools and even from like the wind tunnel it needs calibration. And that calibration often comes from real world test running. So yeah, there's a lot to do, and all the teams are running with the same problems. So Fred Vasseur is having to already at this stage point resources at different areas of the car, because don't forget, we haven't seen this. Their biggest worry, I think Fred's biggest worry, is the power unit. We haven't had any data on it. We don't know whether it's reliable. We don't even know if it's matching the same horsepower as Mercedes. We know Audi's pretty close. We know they've been working on reliability for the last, at least 4 months. And Ferrari are just so behind the curve. I think that's what we're getting, painting the picture. Ferrari's 26 car is way behind the curve. Audi have already done a run of their car, right, on their day with last week in Barcelona with Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. Not for performance, but just it's a shakedown. Audi are really showing that they're ahead of the curve. Ferrari are so far behind, they need to catch up. So they're having to freeze parts of development to try and be ready for Barcelona. And Fred, when he heard his engineers say that they weren't going to be ready, he went crazy about it. He said that's not acceptable. So again, shambles at Ferrari. just an absolute monkey fuck in the football ground. Still crazy. Jaman says the Barcelona test will be about long distance, race pace, reliability too. No team wants any part falling off halfway through. Exactly. You're exactly right. This initial test can this car make it round a number of laps without falling apart, shaking itself apart? Are they going to get gearbox mount problems, engine mount problems? Does the chassis integration work? It's literally the basic, is this bolted together? Is it going to hold? Is it going to hold Maverick? Right? That's literally what they're doing. Performance will come later. And Brandon says a great point about the Ferrari engine. We know it's not 18:1 compression ratio under race temperatures like the Mercedes engine is. So they're already at disadvantage with their power unit. I mean, to go with a steel cylinder head instead of an aluminium one, which we know will move under, will expand at the racing temperature to allow, and it only has to expand by 0.5 of a millimeter. That's the cylinders need to expand by 0.5 of a millimeter. That's it. That's literally the width of a piece of paper to go from a 16:1 compression ratio to an 18:1 compression ratio. Yet it has to be done uniformly, and also, you know, the cylinder heads have to do the same thing. I mean, it's a crazy amount of engineering to make that work. But yes, Mercedes have cracked it. Ferrari have not. And do you know what's really key? Someone did the maths on this. A 16:1 compression ratio to an 18:1 compression ratio. Someone did the maths, and they believe that can be worth 0.3 of a second a lap as a rule of thumb. 0.3 of a second, which is crazy amount of time. So Mercedes have got a huge advantage. Shane says, what's your thoughts about McLaren? Not saying there's talk, but Renault was supposed to have a good engine. They said before they shut it down this year. Well, Renault, you see, here's the thing about Renault. Renault have made great Formula One engines throughout history. They've had, like all engine manufacturers, Honda have done some crappy engines. Speak to Fernando Alonso about it. But they've also made some great engines. Renault have made some great engines. The big problem is Renault have run out of money, which is why this year they've disbanded their engine development program. Renault have just run out of money. The whole group at Renault are losing money. Their share price has plummeted. Their car sales have plummeted, and they're just not making enough money. So they can't put it into Formula One. And honestly, developing engines is expensive, and they haven't done a good one for a while. So Renault now will leave the engines behind obviously for the next 5 years. They're not going to be in the next regulation cycle. If we go back to V8s in 2031 and they reduce the hybrid component to next to nothing, could we see a Renault engine in 2031? I think it depends on how Renault the group do. But yeah, Renault are out from the engine game for the next 5 years. So with McLaren running Mercedes engine, we go back to your other question, what do you think about McLaren? I think the reason why McLaren beat Mercedes this year and last year is because McLaren got their aero right. They're using the same power unit as Mercedes, but they built a better car around it. They built a better chassis. They were able to run at a lower ride height and stay legal. They adopted early the Adrian Newey suspension solution, which was push rod front, pull rod rear. Everyone changed to Adrian Newey suspension, which was the Red Bull design suspension. They did that early enough, and they worked hard on their aero, and it was their aero that was the difference. The way they were able, because it was all about the ground effect era, the whole benefit of ground effect era is run your car as low to the ground as you possibly can, so the car sucks to the ground, and that gives you more grip, right? That's literally the ground effect era, and all teams were competing to run their car as low as possible. The lower they could run, the better the car performed. Ferrari, unfortunately, had built a car that could run at a low ride height, and the car was pretty decent and competitive and balanced through the corners. Problem was, they couldn't sustain that low ride height throughout a 70-lap race. The car was illegal because the skid plate wore down too much, and it was illegal. Now McLaren were one of the teams that cracked it early. They managed to make it so they were able to have a legal car at the end of the race. How did they do it? Well, they were one of the first teams that took advantage of the skid blocks. I'm getting really techie here. The skid blocks in the plank, they expanded through heat. They heated those the skid blocks to expand through heat during race temperature to take all the wear. So when the plank wear was measured at the end of the race, they were legal. And that was illegal. That was an piece of engineering that worked. And that's how McLaren were able to run lower, better aero. And that's how they managed to beat Mercedes. Going into 2026, though, it's a different kettle of fish. Aero's important, but we're gone back to mechanical grip. We're getting rid of the pull rod suspension in the rear, going back to push rod. The ride height will be less of a problem. They're going to need some movement in the suspension because we're getting rid of the ground effect. They're long gone are the Venturi tunnels, and they're gone with active aero. So the cars are going to be fundamentally different. They're narrower. The tyres are narrower at the front. Regenerative braking. They are completely different cars. So what McLaren may have learned in aero over the last regulation cycle, will it benefit them in 26? Maybe a bit. But I don't know. So moving into 26, if I think the question, oh God, I've taken ages to answer this question. Will McLaren still be dominant with a Mercedes power unit over Mercedes? I don't know, is the truth. I think chassis is going to be key. Power unit's going to be key. And battery is going to be key. Battery management is going to play such a massive part because 50% of that power is coming from the battery. So there's a lot of different factors, whereas last year it was all about aero and ground effect. This year it's going to be, I think battery is, no one's talking about battery as much as they should be. The quality of the battery is going to be vital. Which battery is able to charge quicker, retain charge quicker, deliver power more effectively, more efficiently, but still power the punch that it needs to overtake. And I think that is going to be what differentiates the cars next year. Will McLaren do it? I don't know. Not sure. Sema says 26 might be the season of previous underdogs. Exactly. Aston Martin, baby. Aston Martin. Adrian Newey's rocket ship. Whole regulations for him to exploit. I love it. I'm here for it. Aston Martin, man. They're going to be my pick. Jaman says the Renault race engine division was bought into and now co-owned with Chinese company Geely. I was expecting a Chinese-backed F1 team coming soon, but current economics has placed a pause. Well, I think if there's a Chinese-backed F1 team, because obviously China own Lotus, it could be, wouldn't you love to see the Lotus brand back on the grid? Black and gold. Yeah, I'd be here for it. I'd be here for it. All it says Cadillac can find things around the engine a Ferrari won't have. Can find things around the engine Ferrari won't have. What? Cadillac? I mean, if you think about how much money Cadillac have got. I know we talk about cost caps, but surely the knowledge that Cadillac have acquired from their other divisions has to play a part when it comes to Formula One. Just the expertise that they bring in from different parts of the company. I would back Cadillac if they put their mind to something. And God, you know, they're not coming in to make up the numbers, are they? Cadillac are coming to win, just like Red Bull did in 2005. Took Horner 5 years to win a championship. But they got competitive pretty quickly, didn't they? They rose through the ranks pretty quickly. I would expect Cadillac will do the same. I expect Cadillac to do the same. I think Cadillac will have, in F1 terms, a fairly meteoric rise to being competitive. That's what I think. Sema says, Alonso, let's go. Yeah. Why not? Why not see Alonso, 45 years old next year, winning a world title? I'm here for it. Lance Stroll getting his podiums. I know you're all Lance Stroll fans, but, you know, Lance Stroll up there fighting at the front. I know some of you'll hate that, but it could happen. Could happen. Jaman says, me too, would love to see Alonso constantly on the podium this year. Oh, I hope so. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Crackeye says, Williams... Yeah, do you know what, Crackeye? Good point. Williams are playing quietly in the background. Going to be interesting how well they do. Well, Crackeye, I agree. James Bowles doesn't shout things, does he? He whispers. He quietly gets on with it. He lets the results speak for himself. And I do think the feedback loop now between Carlos Sainz and the team is getting very, very good. I think the harmony between driver feedback, car development, we can see how the Williams improved, didn't we, over the last season. And now with this new regulation cycle, James Bowles will have been working on the 26 car all year. His brain will have been there. I know that they developed the 25 car, but Bowles will have been thinking about a big leap forward in 26. They've got the Mercedes power unit. That could be a big tick for them. They've got new title sponsors. More money coming into the team. Yeah, I wouldn't... good drivers. Sainz is a good driver. Albon, on his day, can be a good driver. He went off the boil last half of the season, unfortunately. But the first half of last season, he was great. He was strong. He looked like a very, very good driver. He lost his way. When Carlos Sainz started performing well from Baku onwards, we saw Albon's confidence dip, making some mistakes, putting the car in the wall. But that doesn't mean he's not going to come back strong and we're going to see the best of him next year. But yeah, you're right. Williams, all could be surprise packages. Now, speaking of Aston Martin, Damon Hill. He explains how Adrian Newey could pull off a complete surprise at Aston Martin in 2026. Now, to us, an F1 Grandstand community, this isn't a surprise, but they talk about an F1 to oversteer today. He's basically saying that even though Adrian Newey under promise over deliver, he agrees with our community that Adrian Newey is going to bring a rocket ship in 26. He already said that when he was listening to Adrian Newey in his interviews, that he believed, Damon Hill believes that Adrian Newey has found some loopholes that he's able to exploit. And he believes when listening to Newey, he said, I've seen that before. Newey has found something. And Damon Hill said that 5 months ago in a tweet. And you've got to remember, Damon Hill knows Adrian Newey very well from the Williams days. I mean, Adrian Newey gave, Damon Hill a championship winning car. So yeah, he basically, to cut a long story short, because I've been waffling on a long time, he basically said Adrian Newey's ability to master regulation change could see Aston Martin be the surprise package of 2026. He agrees with us. Thank you, Damon. And the master of seeing through regulations is Adrian Newey, who's gone to Aston Martin. He left Red Bull and Max Verstappen behind, and Christian Horner had left that team. He's gone off to Aston Martin. He's been working on this project now for a good 18 months or so. So we're sort of expecting him to wave his magic wand over Aston Martin, and it probably will happen. Nice one, Damon. I'm in agreement, and I think there's a lot of people in agreement. What, Brendan? You're a Lance fan. I found one. I found a Lance Stroll fan. Good, because Lance Stroll is quick in the wet. And he can be quick. And I think Lance Stroll can improve. I think he can improve. Kyle. Jeff says Kyle's a huge fan of Stroll. There you go, Kyle. You're getting roasted here, mate. All my Aston Martin Lego or Alonso. It's a safe space, Kyle, Gemma says. You're among friends here. Stop winding Kyle up, Gemma. Stop winding him up. But yeah, it's good. I think Lance will get podiums next year. I agree with Damon Hill. And exactly. And listen, Brendan says, don't forget about his performance with his broken wrist. That showed a level of grit to get in the car after literally breaking your wrists. And he had only a few weeks off and he was back in the car driving it. Lance Stroll, he's not great with the media because the media aren't great with him. Because all they want to say is daddy's money, don't deserve a seat, yada, yada, yada. People forget that Lance Stroll, is quick on his day. And Lance Stroll has a tough time. Every time he reads anything about himself, it's negative. So, look, I know he's got privilege. I know his dad owns the team and he's got a safe seat. But in a way, what comes with that privilege is pressure. This year, he really needs to show his value as a driver. And I think he's got to recognise that himself. Otherwise, if he doesn't, I think he walks away himself. Not because he's told to, but I think he just goes, I don't need this shit. I'm out. But let's see. Adrian Newey might have given him some pointers. He's got some good team. He's got some good people behind him there. Let's see what he does. And All In says, yeah, Lance Stroll's quick when he likes the car. Oh, Crackite says, how did he get a broken wrist? Pure passion, I heard. Bloody hell, Crackite. And then Jaman says, the only way Lance Stroll gets on the podium is a wet race with a large amount of DNFs. Let's see. I agree with Gemma. Over a lap, he can be quick. And, give him a car. Let's see. And you're right, Semma, that's his big problem. It's his frostiness with the media. It does not help him very much at all. I agree with that. I do agree with that. Other story coming out. All the F1 teams are struggling with the new minimum weight. No teams are getting down to that weight. They're all big. They've all need to get on the Weight Watchers diet because look, they've basically they've brought the weight down. So the weight limit, the minimum car weight for F1's new rules has been set. It's 768 kilograms. That's 32 kilograms down less than the 25 limit of 800 kilograms. But they've also reduced the size of the car. Wheelbases come down to 3,400 millimeters, been cut by 200 millimeters. So yeah, look, the cars are gradually getting smaller. But you got to remember, the cars used to be 600 kilograms. So they're still heavy cars, and the drivers want the weight of the cars to come down. It's good, but the problem is with the hybrid systems, they're freaking heavy. But so this is what's been said. We'd all like the cars to be a lot lighter. Some of the solutions being mooted in terms of future powertrains would lead to significantly lighter cars, which is what everyone would like. It's a trade-off between financials, technological freedom, and how cutting-edge Formula One is. Environmental considerations and excitement. We can go towards negating some of the dimensional aspects of the car, but it has to be possible to come back to a car that is simpler than it is now. Get rid of the hybrid systems. That's what we all want. I think the cars are definitely too heavy. They are too big, and the ground effect and the ride heights we are racing are not really fun to drive, said Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso, who debuted in 2001 when the car weight was below 600 kilograms. So yeah, Fernando Alonso, I agree with him. We need to get the weight out of these cars. Get rid of the batteries. Get rid of the hybrid systems. That will help. George Russell says it's going in the right direction, making the cars smaller and lighter, but there's a long way to go. I mean, my personal view, I hope a lot of you agree, if you want to get the car weight down, ditch the freaking batteries and the hybrid systems. Just get rid of them. Go back to, I mean, look, even, V8s made out of cool, lightweight alloy materials with sustainable fuels. Got to be the way to go. Get those car weights down to, 600 kilograms again. They'll be better for racing. It'll be great. Crackhead says, laughing at us, too many pigs in blankets apart from Hamilton. Electric engine is a problem this year. Exactly, Olin. That's the weight problem. It's the hybrid systems. Let's get rid of it. Yeah, I agree with Brandon, man after my own heart. Remove the hybrid. Get rid of it. We should start a campaign. Toto Wolff wants the hybrid systems gone, right? And he's making money out of them. He's got there's three customer teams and Mercedes. He's happy to go back to V8s, naturally aspirated, sustainable fuels. It's the future. Thane says, even before hybrids, cars were overweight for safety reasons. Yeah, I agree the cars need to be safe. I'm not against the halos and the safety features, good. We don't want people dying, right, on the racetrack. Everybody loves a shunt, but nobody wants to see race car drivers lose their lives, right? Yeah, Brandon says we have a sustainable fuel that the motorsport industry has used for years. It's called methanol. Exactly. I mean, Aramco have apparently got a pretty good sustainable fuel for 2026, a synthetic fuel. And apparently it's light years ahead of Shell and the other fuel manufacturers. Jamal said the only way to use hybrid systems is when the batteries become smaller and solid state. Well, that's true. Look, the technology would improve, right? Eventually, the batteries will get smaller, get cheaper, won't damage the environment as much. Mining for cobalt, who knows? I don't know. Kyle says NASCAR, monster trucks and dragsters sound 10 times better than an F1 car. Of course they do. And Thane also said the things that make them heavy is due to safety, not due to batteries. Kyle also says you should be able to feel a race car go past. Yeah. You should feel a race car go past from the noise it's making and the vibrations. Give me those V8s, baby. Minimum V8s. But yeah, they're all saying they're struggling with this weight though. Oh, I forgot. I've got the treat for you. This is a treat. This was the treat. So Cadillac have launched a pretty sick test livery for Barcelona. You want to see it? Here it is. Ooh, I think that's cool. So this is Cadillac's test livery for their 26 car. I think it looks cool. It's in monochrome. Cadillac will be launching their actual livery on 20th, I think, of January. But what do we think, guys? For their test in Barcelona, I like it. Monochrome Cadillac. I think it's freaking cool. Yeah, I'm here for it. Yeah, very cool. And you can see how in silver, in the greys, how they got the Cadillac logo going down the back. Over, yeah, I think I'm going on side pod. I think it's cool. I like it. But yeah, that's Cadillac's test livery for Barcelona. And do you know what it did? It's getting me excited for Cadillac on the grid. It's getting me excited to have a new team on the grid. I'm excited to see Perez. I'm excited to see Bottas. I'm excited for the extra entertainment that you're going to get from the Instagrams and the tweets from Bottas and Perez. Because Cadillac are not just bringing a car, they're bringing an audience. They're bringing a new fan base into Formula One. I'm here for it. But yeah, that's obviously their actual livery launch will be way more colourful than that. But yeah, pretty cool. That's right, Jaman. The actual livery will be launched Super Bowl halftime, baby. What a way to launch your livery. I mean, what a way to do it. Yeah, you can... The halftime show in the Super Bowl, the biggest sporting event in America. And it's like, hey, Cadillac are here, baby. This is how we're entering Formula One. And here's our car. It's going to be cool. It's going to be cool. Kyle Melser said the names of the crew are on the nose of the Cadillac car. Yes, they are. I mean, it looks all monochrome, but yet they've done all of the all the font on the car. It looks wicked. I think it's very cool. I think it's super cool. But yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me. Big thumbs up for the Cadillac Barcelona test livery. God, I've been going on for ages. This has been the best part about the show. This is the bit that you've been waiting for. The Cadillac livery. But I mean, I know it's not their actual livery, but it is very cool. Brandon says, why can't a number of teams or cars that have built a car that passes inspection and only have, say, 22 cars start? That would open the floodgates for innovation. Well, I mean, I've had this conversation. Basically, is why is Formula One limited to 12 teams? Like in the current legislation and regulations, but the FIA allows for 12 teams only, which means you're never going to get more than 24 cars on the grid. There's got to be some sort of reason for that. I don't actually know what it is. If anyone knows, get in the chat and tell me, because you know, how many cars compete in F2, right? There's way more. I mean, you know, just so why are we limited? Because there's got to be a reason for it. Do you think qualifying all in? Do you think it's to do with qualifying? The actual structure can't support more teams, because the qualifying's changing next year anyway, because Q1, when this year we lost 5 cars in Q1 going into Q2, now we're going to lose 6 cars in Q1 going into Q2, and same in Q2, we lost 5 cars going into Q3, and next year we lose 6 cars going into Q3. So there's still only going to be 10 cars in Q3 for the shootout. We're just losing more cars out of Q1 and out of Q2, from 5 to 6 in both steps, in both sessions. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Could they? If there was, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it is qualifying all in. It's a good point. It's a good point. Maybe it is. It's just the structure of qualifying wouldn't work. Yeah. You probably not. Ed Sema says not enough pit garages. I think there are though. I think there's way more. All in says, yeah, maybe they'd have to change the way qualifying works. Kyle says the teams don't want to share the purse from the TV deals. That's got to be part of it. That's why Cadillac have to pay $400 million dilution fee. Yeah, I think that is a big issue, actually, Kyle. The teams get they get half of the TV revenue shared between the teams. So yeah, it dilutes the purse, and maybe that's it. And that's why there was a big thing about if Horner, well, that's why they were pleased about Cadillac coming on and they all approved Cadillac. It's because it's the extra value, because Formula One does better with more fans, and opening up that American fan base and bringing all those fans in is good for everybody. And that's why they, the choice of who's going to get that final 12th FIA license to be the 12th team is going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle because they've got to bring extra value. For the other teams, they've got to sanction it, I think. All in says, but Q1 will be overpopulated if there are more than 24 cars. That's true. Jimbo, could Horner use Cadillac engines in 27? If Cadillac become a power unit manufacturer for their own team and they want customer teams, then sure. I mean, Ferrari like having customer teams. Mercedes like having customer teams. It just depends on how many customers they have. Even Honda say there were benefits from supplying multiple teams with Honda engines because of the data you collect and also the money you collect. But it allows you to develop the engines in a different way. So would Cadillac have a customer team? Possibly. Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't see why not, because Horner is not going to sort of take that data and build his own engine, is he? So I don't see why Cadillac wouldn't be quite pleased about having revenue coming in from having a customer team. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would like to find the answer to that. I'm going to ask ChatGPT why. This is do you know what? Tomorrow's show, I'll bring the answer. I'll give you the ChatGPT answer as to why Formula One is limited to only 12 teams maximum. Carl says, if you look at Le Mans races, the permanent tracks can handle more cars. The limit would be road courses that only host F1 races. They only build enough garages for F1 teams. Ah, good point. Good point. Vegas, Monaco, Abu Dhabi. Is it Abu Dhabi? Yeah. Azerbaijan. There's a few, isn't there? Street circuits. Jaman says, I'm still predicting Cadillac is waiting for the engine regulations to change in 2029 with sustainable fuels V8s. I would say that would be sensible for Cadillac. If I was Cadillac, I'd be like, why are we rushing? Like, I know we want an all-American team, but why not give ourselves 5 years rather than 3 to achieve that? But, if you've got a Cadillac boss who goes, I want them American engines. Terrible accent again. Sorry, I apologize to all Texan Americans. Terrible accents. I know, I don't mean anything by it. But yeah, it's, maybe they I don't know, maybe there's a hurry up. Maybe there's a hurry up on it. I have no idea. But yeah, I'm going to leave it tonight on that. The Cadillac test livery for Barcelona. It's been a great show. Thank you to everyone. All of you getting involved. Been a really busy chat tonight. Loved it. Really driven the show tonight. Lots of good stuff. Really good fun. Thank you to all of you. I will be back same time tomorrow, 7:30. Please do join me. I will set the stream up earlier so you get your notifications. I think that's probably my fault. And do look out for any daytime news shows, which will be in the form of a video. And hopefully you'll get a notification on that as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Chat's been brilliant. You've made the show great. I will see you all tomorrow night at 7:30. Smash a like on the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you're watching this on replay, don't forget you can still get in the chat. And I will answer your comments. I'll see you tomorrow night, 7:30. Ta-ta.